Hello, welcome to this exciting lecture on Chinese pneumatologies. And let me share the PowerPoint. You can see from here that I will use the next 20 minutes to share on the exciting pneumatologies, plural, in the history of Chinese Christianity. And this presentation is based on my newly published book, called Spirits and Chinese Religiosity, retelling the history of Chinese Christianity from a Pentecost perspective by Palgrave Macmillan. And in the very beginning, I want to share that Chinese Christianity uh, has a very long history of almost 1400 years. Uh, and then my argument is that the Chinese pneumatologies have been deeply rooted in the rich spirit world of China, and the multi-faceted and variegated spirit world of China serves as a dancing floor, which is a very important metaphor in this book, for the Holy Spirit, facilitating meaningful interactions and producing very diverse pneumatologies. And so in this short lecture, I will very quickly go over the Chinese pneumatologies in 8 stages, and then end with my own contemporary pneumatology for the third millennium. And this 1400 year of the history of Chinese Christianity can be uh, roughly divided into 8 stages, and then I will go through them one by one. And it is very important to point out that uh, John Ledgerway, an author of the book China, a Religious State, observes that the perennial structures of Chinese religions and society can best be described as a series of concentric spaces inhabited by the gods, and that the name Shenzhou, or continent of the spirits, a popular nickname of China that came into use in the 3rd century BC, is one of the clearest statements of what China is. So this is a background of the rich spirit world in China. And then the Jingjiao is the earliest Christianity, because the Tang Dynasty is renowned for its hospitable reception of foreigners, including Arabs, Persians, and Syrians, to such an extent that its capital, Chang'an, became an international meeting place along the Silk Route. And consequently, a variety of new foreign religions were introduced to China, including Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Manichaeism. And collectively, they were called the three Persian teachings, or the three Persian religions. And then Jingjiao, being the earliest Chinese Christianity in China, faced a unique challenge. How could they effectively convey the story of Pentecost in Acts 2 and the Holy Spirit to a people who had never heard about the Holy Spirit? So here I'm studying one of the most important authentic documents of the entire Jingjiao corpus, which is called the Discourse of the One God. And this is the only document out of the 7 that contains a complete record of the Pentecost events in Acts chapter 2. And here I'm listing the English translation. The 10 days after he had ascended to heaven, the Messiah sent a message to the disciples by enlisting the help of the pure spirit. So here you can see that the Holy Spirit is rendered as the pure spirit. And he watched his disciples from heaven. Clearly, what could be seen was the reception of the pure spirit, who, like a fire was light, rested on the disciples' heads in the form of tongues. And I have a few observations from this text. And the first one is that the impersonal sound from heaven as of a violent wind, which I quoted from the Peshitta Bible in originally in Syriac. Uh, so this impersonal sound is replaced by the personal figure of Jingfeng or pure spirit, who acts as a messenger between the Messiah and his disciples. So this adaptation is essential because the abstract nature of the Holy Spirit, being invisible and intangible to China, poses a significant challenge for the Chinese people to accept. And by depicting the Holy Spirit in the form of qi, or air or breath, and its extension, feng or wind, this Pentecost narrative makes the Holy Spirit both tangible and experienceable. And my second observation is that, in contrast to the prominent role of the Holy Spirit during the Pentecost event, as depicted in the Peshitta and many other Bible translations, here the Spirit appears to be more subordinate, as her assistance was sought by the Messiah, and then the disciples received her presence. So this a shift makes sense given the focus on the teachings and action of Messiah in the manuscript. Third, considering the spirit world of China, a key aspect of the pericope is the emphasis on the ethically pure nature of the Holy Spirit. And then this highlights the Holy Spirit's morally purifying role vis-a-vis the numerous avenging spirits, hungry ghosts, and discontented ancestors in China that have long been haunting the Chinese people. And moreover, the Jingfeng, or the pure spirit, also reflects Jingjiao's audacious engagement with qi from an ethical perspective. And number four, distinct from the other Bible translations, the Pentecost narrative recorded in this manuscript emphasized the universal scope of the Holy Spirit's work, namely to teach all people and nations. And also mentioning the phrase all under heaven, 天下, that all under heaven can receive the economy of the honored one of the universe, referring to God. So this universal aspect is absent in the Peshitta and other Bible translations. And um, in the pre-modern China, 天下, or all under heaven, was closely tied to the interplay between cosmology and politics. By examining the deployment of the 天下 concept in other documents, Professor Zheng Qingbao from Taiwan underscores the political theological dimensions of Jingjiao. However, I argue that what's often overlooked is the Holy Spirit's universal scope of actuating the Messiah's soteriology and revealing God's salvific economy. And so the Spirit does so by dancing in harmony with the cosmological chi. And this cosmic dance reveals the Messiah to all people and nations and underscores God's salvific economy, while at the same time demonstrating Jingjiao's counter-political nature through the power of the Holy Spirit as a pure wind. Next stage is called Yeli Kowen. It's when the missionary of the Church of the East came back to China after they were expelled. They were forced to leave China during the Tang Dynasty, and so now they came back to China during the Yuan Dynasty, whose empires, whose emperors came from the Mongols. And during this stage, some, if not most, of the scholars of Yerikowen exhibited a trend of Hanhua, or becoming increasingly akin to Han Chinese culture. Han refers to the majority of Chinese race or ethnicity. And among them, there is a literati called Ma Zuchang, who was celebrated for their outstanding literary contributions. And Ma's family heritage aligns closely with Confucian scholarship, leading many, including Mao himself, to actively embrace Confucian perspectives on politics, morality, and ethics. And their relationship also expand Confucian literati, Buddhist monks, and Taoist practitioners. And so in my book, I examined his poems. Actually, the one on the left comes from for 与恼恼子山郎中 and from this hymn poem, you can read, for example, silent steps in the late night amplify the words of prayer, through which the longing is for a spiritual rain or rain of the spirit to quench the spring drought. So here, um, I compare it with the Peshitta record in Zechariah chapter 10, verses 1 to 3. And then I observed a fascinating parallel between those two statements, as both acknowledge God as a source of rain while identifying a drought as a divine punishment for those who fail to serve God. However, the perspectives diverge significantly when it comes to Ma, the author of the poem. In this context, Shen Ling, or God the Spirit, or God as a Spirit, is described as governing a qi and bringing forth rain, an expression of qi in Chinese philosophy. And this notion inherently reflects his fusion of the Holy Spirit with Yuan Dynasty's spirit world. And I also argue that Ma highlights a concealed private life as a believer, rooted in a rich Christian heritage, which was revealed in his prayer for rain. And this perspective significantly differs from his public persona as a Confucian literati and a government official. And yet, this is all the more natural considering his long family tradition of keeping dual identities of Yelikoan followers and also criticized Confucian scholars. And then at the next stage, we come to the Jesuits during the Ming and Qing dynasties. And then during these two dynasties, Jesuits introduced Catholicism to China through the pioneer efforts of Michael Ruggieri and the more famous Matteo Ricci. And at that time, Imperial China was governed by Mandarins or Confucian scholar officials, and consequently, the primary challenge for the early Jesuits was to articulate their beliefs by engaging with the Confucian classics and establishing relationship with the literati. And here I studied Giulio Alani's pneumatology revealed in daily excerpts of oral admonishments. And here I studied how Alani explained to the Chinese people how to experience the Holy Spirit and the descending of the Holy Spirit as exemplified as spoken in the narrative of the Pentecost. And so here, based on the document, which I believe I did not put down, it's a long paragraph. So my main argument is that Alani portrays himself as the master and who wields authority implicitly granted by a network of disciples. And so between the dialogue between master and his disciples it also sounds like the model of Confucius, who has a huge following. And then so in this paragraph, Alani directs his audience attention toward the appropriate internal condition of their hearts to prepare for the descent of the Holy Spirit. He also seeks to engage with the prevailing philosophical thought of his time, the learning of the mind, 心学, rooted in the ideas of Lu Jiuyuan and also Wang Yangming. The learning of the mind, or the school of the mind, represents a significant branch of Neo-Confucianism that contrasts with Li Xue, which emphasizes the mind embodies Li, or principle. So for Alani, the fire of the Holy Spirit can only descend upon people's hearts if their inner evil fires are quenched or resolved. So thus his ethical and moral perspectives on the condition of the heart hold the potential to complement, if not supersede, the learning of the mind. However, Alani's commendable efforts in engaging with Neo-Confucian schools of thought came at a price. So my argument is that Alani uh, plays down the centrifugal power of the Holy Spirit, the outgoing to the world, the missionary perspective, and then he emphasizes the centripetal, meaning inward looking. You look at your own heart. So turning one's attention inwardly, that centrifugal power of the Holy Spirit for mission, going out to search the lost, is compromised, or if not entirely sacrificed. And Eleni does, of course, address the missionary aspect of the Pentecost narrative, suggesting that the disciples became zealous to spread the holy teachings in all directions. However, the majority of his discourse, including his parable about preparing one's house for an official's visit, tends to emphasize the prerequisites for the Holy Spirit's descent rather than its impactful effects on mission. Next, came to the let's come to the early Protestant pneumatology exhibited in Robert Morrison, who was the earliest, the first Protestant missionary to China. And then by analyzing the pioneer work of the Morrison and his younger co-worker Milne in late Qing dynasty, I argued that their theological engagement with the Holy Spirit provided a strategic framework to assert Christianity's preeminence over Confucianism and popular spiritual practices of that time. And so situated between the Catholic rice controversy and the Opium War, their mission occurred during the Qing dynasty's decline, marked by tensions between their dual rules as alleged agents of Western imperialism and facilitators of modernization through Western education, translation, and cultural exchange. And my argument is that central to their approach was the translation of Christian concepts into Chinese cosmology. For example, he used Sheng Feng, or the Holy Spirit, bridged Christian theology with Chinese notions of qi and feng, air and wind, respectively, enabling resonance while asserting doctrinal distinctiveness. For the sake of time, I have to really go faster. And so my next chapter talk about the earliest Pentecostal missionaries, exemplified by Leslie Angling, who established the home of Anicephorus in Tai'an, China, very close to my hometown. And then so in this house, mostly are Leslie and his wife, and then the orphans and the elderly people who lacked family support. So this house, this home, combines social relief, education, and Pentecostal experience. What's very important is that this home cultivated indigenous Christian leaders who were capable of sustaining a self-supporting native church, embodying John Nevius' three self principles. And they are also responsible for the Shandong revival, the spiritual revival in the 1930s, 1940s, which converted thousands of Chinese people to Christianity and transformed the local religious practices. And so I argue that at the risk of oversimplification, Jingjiao, Yeri Cohen, and the Jesuits started their evangelization efforts focusing on individuals and elites. And then the Protestant missionaries after them began their mission focusing on individuals and grassroots communities. And in contrast, the Anglings, the Pentecostal missionaries, implemented a strategy based on families and grassroots communities. And therefore, the Pentecostal missionaries, like the Anglings, took an original, decisive step in bringing the gospel to Chinese families at the grassroots level, a theme that unfortunately escaped the attention of many Pentecostal scholars. Next chapter talk about the indigenous spiritual gifts or Pentecostal movement by the branch called the Jesus Family, and then by studying its founder called Jing Dianying, who went through a transformation from engagement with Confucian, Taoist, and Buddhist traditions, and then he became a fervent Pentecostal Christian. And this experience reflected a broader reconfiguration of Christian experience in modern China. And then I argue that this spiritual Pentecostal community exhibited experiential Pentecostal spirituality marked by tongue speaking, prophecy, and realized eschatology, which challenged traditional ecclesiastical structures and cultural norms. And through communal lifestyle, they exhibited a kind of radical economic self-sacrifice blended with charismatic manifestations of the Holy Spirit. And their theological framework centered on Jesus' imminent return and refined community, which forged through the Holy Spirit's transformative work. Then in chapter 9, I examined Watchman Nee and the little flock, or the local churches according to their self-designation, which is now a global and multilingual, multi-ethnic Christian community that has spread worldwide. And then I argue that being a third generation Christian, Watchman Nee was educated in Confucian classics and also Western Christian education. And then after he was converted to Christianity, uh, his wide reading of the English spiritual and theological books provided a solid Protestant theological foundation for him. And so he argues the Holy Spirit's indwelling for sanctification because of his impact. He was influenced by the Catholic Convention, which emphasizes sanctification, and also the Holy Spirit's outpouring for empowerment. And then in 1935, he encountered the Pentecostal movement or the spiritual gift movement in China, in Shandong province. So, of course, this Pentecostal encounter, I argue that transformed his Christocentric theology to a pneuma Christocentric theology. And then this kind of shift, uh, uh, basically, I argue that, of course, in the very beginning, his personal Pentecostal encounter initially spurred enthusiasm among the local church followers, but then later on, due to the disorderly manifestations of the Pentecostal enthusiasm, Watchman Nee rejected the Pentecostal movement, and this tension catalyzed a theological pivot from Christocentrism to a spirit Christocentric framework, emphasizing the Holy Spirit's indwelling and outpouring, articulated through hymns and sermons of Watchman Nee, reinterpreting Christ as the life-giving Spirit, 1 Corinthians 15:45. And last but not least, I constructed a Chinese pneumatology for the third millennium by emphasizing embodied sensory experience of the Pentecost narrative inspired by the Holy Spirit, which was manifested in phenomena such as the sound of the wind, tongues of fire, and dynamic practices, resonate with traditional Chinese concepts such as qi and ling spirits. Despite historical challenges, including secularization and periods of repression of Christianity, China's enduring religious vitality presents a unique opportunity to re-articulate a pneumatology in culturally relevant terms. So by retelling the history of Chinese Christianity from the early Church of the East encounters to Jesuit and Protestant engagement and indigenous and global Christianity, uh, I challenge Western dualistic paradigms and propose a holistic theological anthropology as part of my pneumatological construction. And this constructive theology not only foregrounds the transformative work of the Holy Spirit as expressed in the Pentecost narrative, but also fosters inclusive interfaith dialogue and a global mission that reclaims the agency of indigenous spiritual experiences. Thank you for your time.